With me to talk more about the changes is Minister of Rural Economic Development and MP from Newfoundland and Labrador, Gudie Hutchings. Hi, Minister. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Vashti, for having me on the show.
Minister, can Canadians take from the doubling of the rural rebate that the
Coast to coast, we've listened to Canadians in Atlantic Canada, and I want to give a shout out to Cody Bloy and my colleagues in Atlantic Caucus for continuing to push on this issue. But we had a wonderful program, the oil to heat pump program, and after listening to people over the summer, we realized we had to make some tweaks. We know in Atlantic Canada there are more people heating their homes with oil, so it's significant now to do this now before people start to fill up their tanks for the winter, and show that there is a plan in place to help people move from oil heat to a heat pump source of heat.
And I certainly do take your point on that, and I have questions about the heat pump and in particular heating oil in just a moment. But my original question, Minister, was about the doubling of the rebate for rural Canadians. You have represented rural Canada for a number of years. You know that people in other provinces where the carbon tax was imposed prior to Atlantic Canada had called out specifically what they felt was a disproportionate impact on rural ways of life because of the lack of alternatives. For example, when the price of gas shot up, or when they had to pay a carbon tax on natural gas, for example. Why is it in this instance your government feels it's okay to do something, but not for those Canadians?
Well, we are, Vashti. The doubling of the rural rebate is for all Canadians in all rural parts of Canada. That is not, it doesn't affect farmers or fishers. So we have been listening and we're getting it done now. And like I said, with the combination of efforts between the doubling of the tax, it shows that we do understand that people in rural need a little longer to switch to a greener choice. We need a little longer to make sure that we get EV chargers out into rural areas. So we're listening and we're reacting. And we did react yesterday, and I'm very pleased with the government on the decision that we made.
Carbon price was first imposed on provinces in the West, for example, you were listening to constituents there. Is it because you've seen such a drop in your polling numbers, particularly in Atlantic Canada? I think the Abacus poll in June put the Liberals at 36%. By September, you were down to 30%. The Conservatives at 32% in June were up to 43% in September. Is this
Vashti,
just
this
responding
isn't
to
about
that?
polls, it's about people. And if No, Vashti, this isn't about polls, this is about people. And if you looked at the polls in 2015, you would have seen that we were in third place. I don't pay any attention to polls, but I do pay attention to constituents and people. And I have traveled the country as Minister of Rural Economic Development, and I know what rural Canada is. Look, my riding is bigger than Switzerland. I have over 200 communities. I don't have 10 communities with a population over 1,000 people, over 10,000 people. I've got 5 communities accessible by boat only. So trust me, I know what rural Canada is. Rural Canadians also want to make the right choices. We know there's an issue with climate change. I just wish every party realized there was an issue with climate change. Look, since day one, our focus has been solid. We want to protect the environment. We're going to combat climate change, and we're going to be there for people, and that's what we are now by doubling the rural rebate in all rural areas of our country.
Okay, and certainly I'm not trying to negate from the impacts of climate change, nor the fact that Canadians want our government to help in fighting those effects, but I am asking you about why, when you talk about the constituency that you've represented, you now decide that it's okay to double the rebate for rural Canadians, but it was not okay to do that previously. Why did you not respond then and only now? Is it just because Atlantic Canadian seats were in jeopardy, and you don't have that many seats to be in jeopardy in Western Canada?
No, it's not, Vashti. It's like I've said a few times now. We have listened to our constituents. Everybody wants to make a choice, and we're now helping people make a choice, especially the low-income earners, especially people that are living paycheck to paycheck. And so now we're making sure that everybody can participate no matter what your income is. We're going to help you be cleaner and greener and more money in your pocket, which is what this is all about. It's about affordability. And when this program works here, and we know it's working, we're working with, I know we're working with the provincial partners to roll it out on the ground. It'll be rolled out across the country. So that will help all Canadians, no matter where you live, but especially in rural areas, and especially where you're heating your home with oil.
Just to pick up on that point and the possibility of further amendments to this policy based on issues around affordability. I know that both the Premier of Alberta and the Leader of the Opposition in that province posted statements following the decision around home heating oil. Premier Smith said the federal government has decided that one part of Canada with one type of home heating is worthy of a carbon tax break, while those living elsewhere using another type of home heating do not. Is your government open to, because of the affordability crisis right across this country, looking at other carve-outs for other types of home heating in the future?
That's a discussion that we'll have down the road when we know that this one is working. But I can tell you, Atlantic Caucus was vocal with what they've heard from their constituents, and perhaps they need to elect more Liberals on the prairies so that we can have that conversation as well.
With respect, Minister, does that mean because there aren't Liberals in the prairies right now that are represented around the caucus or around the cabinet table, that the people of Alberta will have to live a more unaffordable life than the people in Atlantic Canada? Does that seem fair?
Vashi, they're going to have the same options. They're going to get the doubling of the rural rebate, and then when the program rolls out, they will be able to afford the oil to heat pump. And trust me, Atlantic Canada, the Atlantic Caucus came with these options. They presented them to the Prime Minister, they presented them to the Cabinet, and they said this is what we think will work in rural Canada and in rural Atlantic Canada. We also have a rural caucus. The rural caucus in Ottawa was fully supportive of this, and I'm sure if it works, and it's going to, the overall message here is to put more money in people's pockets and to reduce the impact of our carbon footprint on the country. We all have to do better for our generation, for our grandchildren's generations, and future generations. So let's come to the table with solutions, and I'll challenge anybody to come to the table with a solution of how we can lower our carbon footprint all across the country. That's what this is all about, Vashi.
But it's also about responding to concerns around affordability. And again, home heating oil is used primarily in Atlantic Canada. I'm simply asking for provinces that don't rely on that, but are paying a carbon tax on what they do rely on to heat their homes while simultaneously facing an affordability crisis, the same that Atlantic Canadians are. Is your government open to a conversation about helping them out?
We're always open to conversations to help all Canadians, Vashi, on the affordability issue, and especially when it is reducing the carbon footprint. That's what we have to do for all families. And again, it is an affordability issue, and this is all about putting money back on people's kitchen tables.
Okay, Minister, I'll leave it there. I'm out of time. I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vashi. Take care.